Hi there and welcome to Techopia. I am very excited because today we are here at the annual general meeting for Leonovus, but it's become so much more than just another meeting, so to speak. It has been a wonderful back and forth communication between what's happening with our presenters, but also, of course, a variety of the attendees. But with me here today, I have a wonderful panel of individuals that I'll ask just a few questions about what's happening with regards to Leonovus, what the future looks like, what's coming up, what changes are happening, and how you are establishing yourself within the market, and of course the amazing partnerships that you've created up to this point, and what lies ahead, because it truly is exciting. So first things first, I'll start all the way at the end. I believe we have James LePalme, which is the VP of Sales for Leonovus. Right next to him, we have Tim Bramble, which is the VP of Product Management. Next to him, we have the CEO of iConnect, Ian Campbell. Thank you very much for joining us today and coming all the way from London, Ontario. I like to give that dramatic pause just to make it sound very elaborate. And then, of course, VP of Partnerships and Marketing, Alison Gaffney. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's start piece by piece. In fact, actually, I'm going to jump over to you, if I can, James. We have spoken about a variety of aspects with regards to how the company is growing, how and what ideas and or concepts and or verticals that you are planning to get into and moving forward as the company is growing. We heard some great news from where the company is currently and how you've just progressed over the last year and a bit, and up to almost 28 employees now, moving up to potentially even 40 and maybe even 100 over the next few months and or year. So a lot of growth taking place. What I'd love to hear from you is a little bit, how are you planning to tackle various verticals and where do you see the most growth for the company moving forward?
Sure. So our technology is very horizontally focused. Anything in the cybersecurity space or storage, every mid-size and above company uses cyber of a certain degree and storage to a certain degree. So first, we're very horizontal. Our focus is really around organizations with large quantities of data that need to store it securely and in different array of public clouds, private clouds, and private storage. So that's the, between floor 2 and floor 4 elevator pitch of what we do as an organization. So when I first joined a few weeks ago, we needed to get better on our verticals. We need to be able to talk how verticals talk. For law enforcement, you need to be able to talk about CJIS. In healthcare, you need to be able to talk HIPAA. And in the financials, PCI compliance. So you need to be able to talk their language. So one of our first forays into a vertical specific strategy is really around public safety and law enforcement. So there's a lot of body camera, car camera, interview room, investigative camera, high definition pictures, large quantities of evidence that are being generated for certain cases. So with that, police agencies, fire departments do not want to be data center owners. They don't want to own storage. They want to take care of the law enforcement and have storage taken care of from another facet. Plus, they need very specific compliance issues around how they store the video camera, chain of evidence. They have to prove that it's untampered with. This video camera can come in from different sources like Panasonic. The evidence can come in from different sources. They can be different police departments. So the ability to have, what Leonovus does, the ability to aggregate all of that data, all of that evidence into a single platform so everybody can point that video and that evidence at us. Then we do our magic inside of encrypt, shred, and spread. And then we also have the ability to be that broker in between if they do have a data center or if they do have an MSP or if they do have a public cloud provider like an AWS or an Azure, our ability to take that encrypted, shredded data and spread it across those public clouds really increases data resiliency, increases data security, and allows for that chain of evidence to be done through companies like iConnect. So.
Beautiful. And now I'm going to ask you to pass the microphone over to Tim because although you've already touched on a variety of things that Leonovus can do and what your platform provides, just the encrypt, shred, and spread concept is once again, I believe something that really makes you stand out. But Tim, I'm going to have you talk about that a little bit more specifically, how Leonovus sets himself apart from what is out in the market in general. And I guess, you know, moving forward, I know that you're growing and also focusing more on blockchain in general and how your products are being adjusted and or focused on that specific realm.
Yeah. So first of all, we're in the software-defined storage space, and what's really important about that is the fact that, you know, we're moving with new cloud sort of focus. We're moving from legacy systems, legacy storage arrays, managing the hardware, to being agnostic to that and being able to take advantage of cloud deployments, as well as being able to maximize use of otherwise idle resources in your data center. So when you look at software-defined storage, and then, you know, the next step of that is what type of storage are we dealing with today? Object storage. Block storage, file storage are relatively well known. They've been around for years. Object storage offers a lot more. It's a much richer form of storage, a lot more opportunities in terms of the actions you can perform on data within object storage. And it's a little more nascent than those other technologies. What is apparent about object storage is that it is, you know, really a building block for the next generation of applications in the cloud. Cloud-native applications rely quite heavily on it. So the ability to, one, play in that space is very important. And, you know, that's sort of table stakes for a software-defined storage solution. What we do specifically around first being able to aggregate storage from multiple endpoints and provide that in a consistent object storage way to various, you know, applications, and the encrypt, shred, and spread that offers both security and data resiliency, and I'll get into that in a second, are very important for this because they allow, you know, customers to not only use what they have on premises, but to actually broker their foray into cloud and multi-cloud environments. So when we talk about encrypt, shred, and spread, what's really important is that, first off, you know, encryption is not a new thing. And for years, people concerned with putting data in the cloud have required encryption. What really comes into play is how you manage that and where you manage that. If you trust the cloud provider to do that for you, then you're ceding some of your control over the data, and that's been a hard stop for a lot of organizations in terms of how they deal with that. So first off, the ability to have that control, and the ability to do the encryption under your control buys you so much. Additionally, and what's really a differentiator for us is the ability to shred and spread this, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is first and why that's important. So when you submit a file to us over the storage interface we provide, the first thing we do is we encrypt it on ingest, so it never sits around in the clear. That file is then broken into chunks, and we further take those chunks of the file and fragment them in such a way that we can store fragments across the multiple storage nodes or, you know, endpoints that we've developed both on-premises hardware and in cloud deployments using cloud storage. Those shreds, we store the little the fragments, and we store additional fragments as well. The end result of which is that even if you lose several of the storage endpoints, we are able to reconstitute your data. And the other aspect of this is that your complete file is never stored completely on any storage endpoint. So now if you're an organization concerned about your data exposure in the cloud, you can rest assured that nobody has access to, you know, by compromising a single storage endpoint or a single cloud or whatever has access to your data. And this ability to reconstitute having lost the storage is really important because you can survive the outage of several storage nodes and still get your full data back. So you can see that, you know, from a data resiliency point of view, from a security point of view, these are really important. Now let's take a look at what this means for you as an enterprise, right? You are now confident that you have your data under your control. You can store it in these places. You can take advantage. You know, a lot of organizations are being pushed to explore hybrid cloud, multi-cloud strategies, and this gives them the tool to allow them to do that. Furthermore, and a really interesting use case I think here is you are no longer beholden to any one provider. You know, Amazon, for example, will let you store pretty much anything, and they don't charge you for the data in, they charge you for the amount of data stored, but data ingress is typically free. The minute you try to take that data out in bulk, they have data egress fees, which cost you dearly. The nice thing about this is you can engineer your deployment in such a way that if you're using multi-clouds and on premises, you can just walk away from a cloud provider should the dynamics change and it's no longer cost efficient for you to use them. So rather than saying, okay, well, I want to get out of Amazon, but I have to pay thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get my data out, that's fine. I'm done with them. And furthermore, I'm not worried about data remnants because that data's secure. And in fact, the whole data isn't there. It's spread across that provider.
Wow, thank you very much for that very, very detailed explanation. I love it because once again, it shows how you have really taken it to the next level and really have taken, once again, the client in consideration and the data in consideration, and really have reviewed all the various options of what potentially could happen to that data and how you can protect it. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Ian, you had a wonderful presentation just showcasing a little bit what iConnect does and what is wonderful about the partnership that you are creating or have created already with Leonovus. And I'll have Alison speak to that a little bit more as well. But it's clear that your company has, and I'm so proud once again, a Canadian company doing such amazing things, established yourself in the market in various industries. What I'd love to know from you though is, what are some of the obstacles that you still run into? It seems that you have really established yourself in the market in so many verticals. And even in the movie industry, which was wonderfully explained, what obstacles do you still find is in this realm? It's clear that people need data to be protected. They understand there's more and more data being produced, especially with video becoming more and more a key aspect of data. What do you feel as those key obstacles, and how do you feel we need to approach those obstacles?
It's a great question. I think one of the challenges that we run into as a software company, because I think any company has challenges, one of them is the expectation of the client. For those of you who here use LinkedIn, Pinterest, Facebook, you expect that when you log in, you're just magically in. And if you wanted to log out, you go up to the top right-hand corner and you click on your name, and about 2 menu items down is your logout button or your change password button. Your expectation is that when you click a video on YouTube, it takes about, I don't know, a millisecond, half a second. If it takes 2 seconds, you're out. And I think the level of expectation from a consumer perspective, because technology is so much commonplace in everyone's lives now, there was a day when the only people who touched computers were computer nerds, computer geeks, and people who, for a job, needed to touch the computer. Now all of us touch the computer every day. In fact, half of the people here have one in their hand right now. So it's one of those things where the level of expectation in our application is that it should work just like the other tools do in my everyday lives. And so we are continually advancing our technology. A perfect example, if any of you who are on Facebook or LinkedIn, and you go down to the bottom of the page, the scroll bar, take it all the way down to the bottom, and you think you're at the end of Facebook. No. The little icon starts to spin, and all of a sudden your scroll bar jumps back up again. And so that technology is called lazy loading. And it didn't exist until about 4 years ago. It just flat out did not exist. In fact, when we first started iConnect, when you had a big document, a 20-page, 40-page document, all the HTML had to render in the background before it just sort of went boom on your web page, and then it was there. But in the meantime, you waited, and even putting a little spinner in there was a really complex task. So I think one of the challenges that we run into as a software platform is a level of expectation for the consumer, and I think that's the nice thing about what we talked about today, both with iConnect and Leonovus, is that our goal is to make the use of the Leonovus technology from an end-user experience seamless. They don't even know it's there. They click a link for a document, they wait, and there's the document. They start watching a video, or in the case of Binge, they're looking at, they're a writer or a marketing person who needs to review that video. We know in the back end we're storing it in packets. We know that those packets are all shredded. We know that if somebody hacks the J drive in the back end, they can't steal the movie. But the end user experience is nothing more than I clicked play and I watch Saving Private Ryan. The other thing, Saving Private Ryan, just to put it in perspective, the HD version of that's about 25 gig. as a digital copy. So again, these are not small files. However, from an architectural standpoint, from a technical standpoint, dealing with a 25 meg file and being able to stream it back to the consumer is not an easy task. So again, what we're doing is really trying to take the technology, put it in the background, make sure that it's really rock solid tech, but from an end user experience, what we are finding is they don't care. They just want to be able to click a button, something happens, and they're on their way. And so our goal as a company is to take really good tech and create a user experience which masks that and simply delivers what they're expecting.
Wonderful, fantastic. Now, I am going to ask Alison, and Alison, you can even, thank you very much, talk to this partnership. It's clear that this is a wonderful partnership, and there's so much potential for the future where this could go. A discussion that's happening more and more these days, as Tim just mentioned, encrypting data is not a new thing per se, but more than ever, it's becoming important what the integrity of that data encryptor is. And it's clear that, you know, with a partnership with iConnect and of course Leonovus, that is a key element that is a great, not only a comforting aspect to a potential client, but also more and more important as we move forward. So maybe you can share with me, firstly, how did this partnership come to fruition? I would love to know. And number two, how would you see this partnership growing? And of course, how is this just an idea of how Leonovus is working together to create more great partnerships like this?
I think Ian and I just met at an event, actually in Toronto. We had one individual, which was common to both of us, and he worked with both companies, and he says, you know, you two are very complementary as a group. And that's what you realize, actually. The Canadian tech scene actually is quite small and intimate, and everybody's interested in helping each other out and trying to come up with end-to-end solutions. And that's basically how Ian and I met. And it was about 6 months ago when we started this conversation, and we think we've come a long way. And it's really about solving customer problems. I think Ian has described it much better than I could as far as the solution. We see a lot of synergies with the customers and partnerships that he has today, and whether it's in the law enforcement area with his partnership with Panasonic, and with the volume of data that he deals with presently with their existing customers. And he showed you a lot of the relationships he has with the U.S. government and how they do deals down there. James brought up earlier that we really we're hardware and software and cloud agnostic. And when you look at the customers that we're engaged with, we will ingest the data however their architecture, their choices are. James had brought up Commvault earlier. That's another data management type of company that we can absorb their data. iConnect with their e-discovery is a type. There's a whole bunch of them, a number of them, that we add value to them. If the customer chooses that type of technology and solution, that's fine with us. We will do the interworking and testing with them, and we'll gain work towards partnerships to formalize those type of relationships, similar to what we have with iConnect. And when we disperse the data, so we'll do our Leonovus, I call it Leonovusing it, the data, then when we disperse it, again, we're cloud or a hybrid or on-prem agnostic. If the customer said, hey, I've already signed a contract with AWS, that's where I want my data to go, that's fine, we'll disperse it there. It's really up to the end customer. So we give a lot of flexibility to the customer as far as what is his business model, he or she business model. I should have put the she in there. Oh, gosh, that's bad of me. We're very much about enabling flexibility for the customer for the business model that they want to manage. And we're just providing that security, the opportunity for the cost reduction for choosing if they want to move into the cloud, and the option for the multi-cloud, which makes them don't lock into a certain vendor type, which we think is very important with the dynamics of the business models that are happening.
Wonderful. And now I'm just going to jump. I have a couple more questions here at the most, and I'm going to try and do a question where I can kind of include everybody to give me an answer. But I'm going to ask one more question for you, Ian. It was interesting earlier you showcased on the slide there just where the company was initially going to start and where you wanted to go, and how little that diagram has changed over the years as well. You kind of have seen, you stayed on track and you've moved forward on that aspect of things. But how do you see it adjusts a little bit in general moving forward? How do you feel you need to kind of evolve a little bit with how this is looking into the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is data volume. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger in diverse data points. We're getting a lot of push now for mobile devices to be able to capture mobile devices. One of the logos you saw up there was Sands Casino. So they actually use us for staff management. So it's not litigation documents, it's not archival of corporate business documents. When they bring a staff member on, all of their Nevada gaming license, passport, driver's license, all gets archived within the system. When they offboard an employee, what they do is they siphon all of their email and all of their text messages from their devices and drop it into our system. Because what they have found historically is that if there's an incident, it typically involves an ex-employee, and now they have a full archive of every email or text message ever sent or received. So for them, it's really it's a risk management process. That really comes down to data volume. We couldn't take on a project like that early days. It was boxes of paper. And we all remember those days, and some of us still have those days. But it went from there to scanning and CDs. It went from there to digital jukeboxes for a while. It went from there to now it's email. Around 2004, 2005, it went exponentially higher, and now we've got copies of copies of copies. And so you saw some of Michael's slides and some of mine talking about petabytes and exabytes and zettabytes, and it's just not going to get smaller. So. Our clients demand the ability to search all that data and retrieve the data. The good news for us is the retrieval is one at a time. Doesn't matter if there's exabytes of data at the back end, they can still only look at one document at a time. So the retrieval is actually a lot easier than you'd think, but the actual storage management and certainly searching across what can potentially be billions of records is a big deal. BP oil spill is 14 billion. Biggest one we did was the US banking investigations, 44 billion pages of information. We actually, I must have been bored one day, tried to figure out how much that was. If you printed it all out and stacked it, it would go from here to the space station 5.5 times. So that's how much paper that would be. So it's a crazy amount of information. And I think dealing with volume is something that we're going to continually be challenged with. And we're looking at some really unique search engines and things to be able to deal with that volume as we move forward.
Okay, wonderful. Now here's a tough question potentially, but I don't think so. So I'd love to hear everybody's insight, and we'll start with you, James. With regards to, we know that the government is obviously trying to be more transparent, so to speak. Also, the CIO Council, they are trying to, Alex Benet, for example, just here in Ottawa, is a very vocal and trying to also digitize digitize the government and try and get this type of communication and transparency out there more frequently. But I'd love to know from each of you, what industry do you believe still needs to embrace the aspect of security, cloud, encryption, and still has a long way to go? So whether it be health, whether it be law, whether it be the entertainment industry, do you feel there's a lot of potential and or growth still required? So I'll start with you, James.
Sure. So I've been in cybersecurity for 25 years. I stopped counting at 25.
You're 28, we know.
I know. I started when I was 3. I was a gifted young kid. So I think over the last decade or so, with respect to cyber, it's kind of really matured. There's certain government departments. The U.S. federal is way advanced with respect to cloud. The Canadian federal, as an example, is coming along, but perhaps a little bit behind. So I don't really think it's a vertical that's behind in cyber. I think everybody is approaching it. I still think there's a lot of reluctancy with respect to the spend on cybersecurity. no one wants to lock their front door. No one wants to spend on security. They want to spend on stuff that increases their ROI or lower their cost or increases their productivity. So cybersecurity has always been kind of an outlier with respect to IT. So I still think there is more room available at the board level, at the CISO level, for budget spend, for maturity, right? So it is still a reactive with respect to cyber rather than a proactive, would be my response to your question.
Yeah, I'd agree with James, and I'd also add that cybersecurity isn't dealt with through altruism, right? Companies don't go out and say, oh, well, we should be more secure, right? It's often what drives them to do that. So if there's a loss of IP, if there's regulation, and we see that a lot, right? Regulatory compliance is huge in enforcing that. So, but the other aspect to this, and we've seen this most recently, is being able to adopt modern deployments with cloud, right? And that really forces the issue because I'm no longer, whereas I might be comfortable that my bricks and mortar data center, I can control that, and the traditional thinking has been around perimeter security, so I can put up great big walls, and I'm fine as long as I control who enters that room. That's not the case anymore, and increasingly, and we're seeing mandates for organizations and industries to actually adopt cloud. That's a forcing point, I think, for cybersecurity.
I think my comment would be in and around the diverse data points. We all have stuff, and I think electronically we now all have stuff in a lot of places. I've got pictures on my phone. I've got geolocation information about those pictures on my phone. I've got files on my laptop. Some of them I put in SharePoint, some of them I don't. Some of them are on the corporate network, some of them aren't. And then even at a corporate level, some of our stuff is in our local servers. All of our email is in Office 365, so that's another diverse data point. So I think the challenge you run into is the aggregation of data, and I think that's across all industries. I think healthcare has a big problem. For example, there's information about all of us in our local clinics that if our hospitals wanted to get access to that and it's a Sunday, they can't. So I think there's a challenge across all the number of different industries, specifically in and around the diverse data points. And so we work very closely with different companies who can aggregate data and do what they call an omni search, where they can search various different data points all at the same time, be able to bring back a little bit of a dashboard of all the things that were found, including an indication of where the items were. And but I think that's across all industry. But it's certainly a challenge, but it's one that there are technologies out there that we're working with who can meet that challenge.
I'm not going to say specific industries, but I think it's the realization. We say your data actually is most exposed if you are only going on-prem. We believe actually you will be more secure if you do a multi-cloud type of approach. So we recommend whether or not the customer is comfortable going into the cloud or multi-cloud. So we tend to say just certain data, start small. Just start with one department, try it out, and I think they learn and have more confidence as they're moving forward, and they'll move more data to the cloud. The other thing is a lot of the breaches, so we focus on data breach. We say you will be hacked. Just assume it, still have your firewalls and everything, but you're going to be hacked because a lot of times the data breach could happen internally. Somebody, think of GDPR, somebody who wasn't authorized could see some confidential data. Maybe they don't do anything dangerous with it. That's negligent to the company, but still you've broken a compliance law and you are exposed. So you need to also make sure that you're having the authentication and authorization to see that data, and we provide that capability and confidence with our auditing tool set. So we just think it's more the mindset of moving to the cloud and moving to the multi-cloud, and how can we help our customers, no matter what industry they are, with that different mindset.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more with regards to what's happening, not just with regards to Encrypt, Shred, and Spread, but also Leonovus and, of course, iConnect and your partnership. Excited to see what the future brings. Excited to see the growth that lies ahead. It looks like there's a lot of amazing things on the horizon, and we are so happy to be able to talk about that and share that as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.